When news of Pele's death hit news portals and social media, it was obviously greeted by a lot of sadness from not just football fans, but even people who are not that close to the sport, who knew what exactly it is that this man meant to the world of football. It's often said that you know the greatness or a true mark of someone's greatness is when they are able to transcend their respective fields. And this man, Edson Arantes do Nascimento, known popularly as Pele, had done just that with sublime ease, considering the fact that he was such a gifted footballer and knew how to bedazzle crowds, entertain crowds, and also, most importantly, win a lot of football matches by scoring a lot of goals from his team. But obviously, Pele, it is worth remembering, lived and played a lot of his football at a time when many of us really weren't alive to actually witness it, because he came much before the era of modern football. In fact, being arguably the first real megastar of the sport, he set the stage for what the world of football is today. But it is important to know him beyond just bare numbers, beyond just the basic ideas of how many goals he scored, how many trophies he won, how many games he played. All of these things, it's time to look a little beyond that. So in this video, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to look at the life and times of Pele, look at how it is he rose from extreme poverty to become the king of the world of football. So without further ado, let's quickly delve into the life and times of Pele, the man and the footballer. Now, a quick snapshot of his career, because again, it was one that spanned a very long period, because he started playing professionally at such a young age. He played 1,363 games overall, and the 1279 goals. This stat, interestingly, is a little bit disputed because, of course, 1279 goals, the only reason I mention this number is because this is the number recognized in the Guinness Book of World Records. According to Pele himself, his overall goal tally, which is, by the way, also mentioned in his autobiography, is 1,283. Regardless, both of these are impressive numbers, and it's even more impressive when you consider he only played for two clubs in his lifetime: Santos of Brazil and the New York Cosmos, a small new club that had cropped up in America at the time. But perhaps the one thing that he's most known for is, of course, the 3 FIFA World Cups that he won. He is still date the only player to have won 3 FIFA World Cup titles in their lifetime. Many have won 2, a lot many more have won 1. Only one has won 3. It's this man, the king himself. Now, this is, of course, a quick snapshot at the basics, the bare basics, or things that you would always associate with Pele. But what about the man behind the image or the person of Pele? Well, Edson Arantes do Nascimento was born in a small town in the Rio de Janeiro area, and when he was growing up, him and his family didn't come from great means. So he was came from a very poor family where a lot of them had to work very, very hard to make ends meet. And in fact, so poor were they that when he actually started taking an interest in football, he could not actually afford a proper football, and him and his friends used to be playing in footballs which they used to make out of old socks, where they'd stuff things like paper or any other waste that they would find among them, or sometimes more pieces of clothing, and they used to eventually make it look like something that resembled a ball, but they never quite had the money to actually use a normal ball like other people in the world did. So, but that was one of the reasons why, as an adult, he had such good ball control. The other being that he also played indoor football, which is known as futsal in today's day and age, very regularly. And according to him, that helped him actually develop more close control, because futsal, played in a smaller area, your first touches, second touches, all had to be extremely precise, or you would be robbed from the ball. And then when he was actually finally breaking out as a young player for Bauru Athletic Club, he was spotted by scouts of a club called Santos, which is one of the biggest clubs in Brazil today, and he was signed on to the club as a 15-year-old player. Imagine that. He was signed to a senior contract, just 15 years old. He was already deemed far too good for, of course, the youth team. So he was handed a senior debut aged 15. What were you doing at the age of 15 is what I'd like to know. I'll tell you what I was doing. I was studying. So you can let us know in the comments what it is you were doing. But imagine, this man at 15 years old was already playing professional football. And that is what led to him having a long and legendary career at Santos. Now again, he made his debut for the club in 56. At the time, he was still only 15 years old. 2 years later, that led to him getting called up for the Brazil team to play the World Cup, where of course he would script another story. That story is for another time in this video. For now, we're only focusing on the club record. So he actually, after a few years' time, began to attract interest from a lot of football clubs. So such was the greatness of the man already that he was officially declared a official treasure of Brazil to prevent him from being transferred out of the country, which meant that he actually spent his entire club career at Santos and scored 643 goals with them. Now, he won a lot of titles with the side, whether it be the Paulista or, of course, the Sao Paulo, local league, whether it be the Brazilian national leagues, and whether it be even the Copa Libertadores, which is, of course, the South American equivalent of the Champions League. He's won all of those trophies multiple times, and he was part of a Santos side that could tour the world and actually go to a lot of other countries and play exhibition matches. Such was their popularity, even at a time when mainstream media or social media as it is now didn't exist. They were so well known that people would flock to stadiums around the world whenever it is Pele and Santos came calling in town. And then he finally announced his retirement from club football in the year 1974. By that point, he had already retired from the national team. What his story was there, we'll get to in just a bit. But 1974, Pele bid goodbye to the world of football. Or did he? He actually didn't, that being the answer. A year later, he ended up having to come back into the game because, by his own admission in his autobiography, he was facing a number of financial issues. So a lot of companies that he had actually ended up starting out, they ended up going bankrupt, and then he was in dire need of money. So the sure shot way for him to make money quickly was to actually come back into the game, and there were still clubs that wanted to sign him, if for nothing else, his marketing value as much as his value as a player. He chose to go for the New York Cosmos, a team in the American League at that point, which is relatively new, which paid him handsome money, and also gave him a chance to grow the sport in a country where football, or soccer as it's known in the USA, wasn't that popular. And Pele's arrival did spark a lot of interest in the game, because in matches that he was playing, the attendance used to be much higher. If he was on the bench and not starting out with an injury, attendance used to be much lower. By the time he left, soccer or football, whatever it is you want to call it, I prefer football, but whatever, actually had started taking off massively in America, and him coming was one of the main reasons why USA could eventually choose to actually host the FIFA World Cup in 1994. And then he finally retired in 1997, and that was a match which I discussed in an earlier Pele video as well. Check that out if you haven't already, where he played one half for the New York Cosmos, he played one half for Santos, and that was it. That was the end of his career, and this time he really did bid goodbye for good. But I reckon I know what you must be thinking. You're thinking, okay, great. His club career you spoke about. What about his Brazil career? Worry not. He remains the only player till this date to have won 3 FIFA World Cups. And not just that, his exploits with the Brazilian team were so legendary that up until 2022, he still remains the record for having the most number of goals for the Brazil team. In fact, as of this recording, there's only one person who has the same number of goals as him, 77, and that is Neymar. Neymar will, of course, go on to break that record in due course, but it is telling that he retired from the national team in the early 70s. And this record stood for 50 years beyond after that. That's just how massive it was, and no one could really catch it. Not even greats like, of course, Ronaldo Nazario or Fenomeno, Ronaldinho, Rivaldo. Brazil's never had a dearth of goal scorers, yet no one could touch this man's record. And in fact, such was the popularity and joy that Pele and co inspired that it actually ended up making Brazil popular around the world. Even countries where people don't really watch football, or countries where people have an interest in football, they revere Brazil as being the side that always plays amazingly great football. That is the effect of Pele. That is the effect of the Brazil team of the late 50s, early 60s and 70s. That was just how good they were. And the man who was at the forefront of it all was, of course, Pele, a man who, as we know, won 3 World Cups and established himself as being the gold standard for a footballer, not just in FIFA World Cups, but arguably among the world. I mean, this man was not just the first transcendent icon that football saw, he was also arguably, and still is considered by many, to be the greatest footballer to have ever graced the game. And going over the kind of career he had, it's easy to understand why it is people make a case for him being just that. But that's just how I feel. What do you guys think? Well, you can let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and tap the bell icon so you know when we're going live or uploading a new video for you guys. Then you can also go and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and last but not least, don't forget to download the SportsTak app. Thank you all once again for joining us in this video. As always, I've been Shane Das. I hope to see you with us through the day, but for now, goodbye.